welcome to an Apple a Day with Dr. Amanda. I'm so glad you're here. So if you can, get a seat, grab some tea, maybe some apples, and just be excited to tune on in. This week, we're talking about building healthy connections. And I'm really delighted because we're really talking to not just moms, but also dads. And it's so wonderful to have dads talking about how it's been on their journey. And so I'm really excited today that we have Zachary Cruz. I have him here, and I've known Zachary for quite a while. And so we were both leaders in different capacities, but youth leaders at one time. And he's a father of young children. So Zachary, welcome to today, and I'm excited to talk with you.
Yes, thank you for having me on. I'm very excited about this. I love the podcast. I've got a chance to listen to some episodes, so I've been enjoying it. So I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks. Absolutely. What are healthy ways to connect with children that you've experienced?
Yeah, so for me, just real quick, a little bit about myself. I am married to a lovely wife named Nina. So if I mention her throughout my answers, that's my wife. I'm also the father of two young boys, two rambunctious, energy-filled boys. I have a 3-year-old. His name is Lucas, and I have a 1-year-old. His name is Elliot. So in thinking of just my questions, I want the fathers or mothers to know, or whoever's listening, even if you don't have children. I have young children, so my answers may not apply to your teenagers or your adult children. So I just wanted to give you guys some context about that. What are some of the healthy ways as far as connecting with my children? I would say just learning how they feel loved, and then also learning what they love to do. So for example, with my 3-year-old, he loves quality time. He loves one-on-one time that is strictly focused on him. And I don't know if it's a jealousy thing because of his younger brother is coming around. He was, used to being the only one, but he just loves quality time. He likes when your focus is just on him. Even when Nina's around and we're both with him, he just likes to be focused on one of us. So as a parent, I have to do things that I don't necessarily like doing. So for example, solving puzzles. Lucas loves to solve puzzles. He'll put down a puzzle with you and figure it out. He's only 3 and he's done 100-piece puzzles already. So he loves to do that. Drawing animals that he wants to draw. I'm not a drawer, and I feel bad for him because he thinks I'm Picasso. He thinks I'm a great artist, but he loves to draw. And then also building blocks with Legos. He loves to do that. So I've learned that's what he loves to do. And I try to just connect with him on that level, learning that he feels loved with quality time, and then learning, that he loves to do that. And then with Elliot, he loves physical touch. He loves for me to allow him to climb all over me. He loves to wrestle. He loves to roughhouse. So that's the way that we just, I don't want to say communicate with each other, but he's not able to talk right now. So he just loves just being held. He loves wrestling, like I mentioned. So I've learned that about him. He loves the physical touch. He loves kisses. He loves hugs. And that's how he feels love. So that's one way that I've learned to connect with both of them.
Thanks. And I really loved what you first said, Zachary, as you talked about learning how each of your kids needs to be loved.
Yeah.
And what that looks like. And I love how you gave examples, because your sons, right, all of us are unique. And I love that, right, or you're learning how they need to be loved. And that's such an important part, right, of the process.
Absolutely.
That you're learning. I may not receive love this way, right? Or like, oh, my son needs this. But I love that as a father that you're doing that. And that's something that has probably made all the difference in that the relationships.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. So what have you learned about yourself as a parent?
Yeah, so in thinking of this answer, this is going to sound very bad, but I'm just being honest. In the beginning, I just learned how selfish I was as a person. So for the first time in my life, I was forced to live for someone beyond myself, right? And this is different than an ordinary relationship, right? I hope that I sacrificially love my wife, right? But she, her living or dying doesn't depend on me being there for her. Now, my kids, obviously they do. So learning how selfish I was as a person. So, their lives depend on me being there when they need me, and doing things in moments where I'm physically and emotionally exhausted, especially as a new parent. So that's one thing that I've learned. And I think I've gotten better in just getting up and just say, even though I'm tired and, obviously I'm not a perfect parent, but I've learned to be there when they need me. But yeah, I know that sounds like a bad answer. I feel like that sounds like a bad answer, but that's something that I learned very quick as a parent.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your vulnerability. I think that's important because that's something that you learned, right, about yourself. And you said, I realized, wow, like, maybe that's selfishness, but just not knowing, right, that, oh my gosh, like here are these two children, you love your wife. And I love how you mentioned that, that sacrificial love, but I have two little children that are dependent, right,
Correct.
on me, and how that probably shifted you, right, to really think, oh my gosh, and that love, right, that you probably have for them, knowing, oh my goodness, it probably is such a shift. And I'm sure that you're not the only one. I'm sure there's parents out there that have had that experience, because it is someone, right, an extension of you and a whole new vision. So I think that's really amazing. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then what are some lessons that you've learned when building connections with your children as a parent?
So I would say try new things that, that you would think, man, this is probably outrageous to try. And maybe, putting your child to sleep, or, trying to get them to eat. So Lucas was a phenomenal eater. He eats everything we put in his way. Elliot, not so much. Elliot is very strong-willed compared to Lucas. So I would say, and one thing that I would mention is, not everything that works if you have multiple children, not everything that works for your first child may not work for your second child. They are two different people. And just like any relationship that you have, or any connection that you're trying to cultivate, you have to learn them inside and out. So it's difficult, obviously, because, Elliot's a 1-year-old and he's still, he's still becoming himself. He's still growing. And same thing with Lucas. But being willing to just try new things, being humble, and knowing, hey, you're a young parent. It's okay if you mess up. You're not going to be perfect. Just being willing to get up and say, all right, it's a new day. Let's try some new things. So that's something that I've learned for sure.
Thanks. So I love that you said, try something new, or be willing to find new things. And again, like, as you're reiterating the importance of knowing that your kids are so different, right? Just in everything they're doing, and it won't be the same. And I also loved you said about humility, that we're not perfect, right? You're going to be learning. And I think that is important, giving yourself that breathing room to say, I'm not going to know everything, and I'm learning. So I think that's a really important point, especially for fathers, right, out there.
Absolutely.
Others.
And I'm blessed, I'm blessed myself. I still have both my parents. So I have my mom and my stepfather, and my father and my stepmother, and my in-laws are all still around. So, and all of them obviously are parents. So I'm able, I'm humble enough, and I've always been someone that asks a lot of questions, whether it's if I'm starting a new job or starting a new endeavor. I'm okay to whoever my leadership is to ask ask many questions. I'm going to talk their ears off for questions. So I would say, hey, if you still have your parents around, or if you still have, people that are older in your life who've been through this, ask them questions, try to see what they have done. And just know that, hey, it may not work, but maybe you can come up and create something that's unique to you and your children.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love that you said that you ask questions. I think that's important, right? That's really that seeking help that a lot of times we don't do, I think. And it's so important that for you, even as a father, that you're modeling that for your sons too, right? Early.
Yeah.
It's great. And then just thinking about, I guess, in terms of building healthy connections, what were some surprises in building connections between you and your sons? I know you mentioned them, but what were some surprising connections that you found over your time as a parent?
Yeah. So the one that really stood out to me was, just in disciplining them or correcting their behaviors. I always assumed, when I was becoming a parent, that those are going to be very hard times. But I've learned that when I am going to discipline them or correct them or warn them about an action that they're doing. So I've come with examples with Lucas. He loves to climb on tables for some reason. When he's climbing on a table and I warn him, hey, be careful, you may fall, and then he inevitably falls and hurts himself. In that moment, he comes running to me, and obviously he's hurt, so he's wanting comfort, but he's also sorry for his actions. But there builds a level of trust that going forward, now Lucas asks me questions. Hey, can I climb this? Or should I not do this? So even in that moment of just correcting them or disciplining them, that's one thing that I was surprised that's a way for you to connect with your child, because they're learning to trust you. They're learning to seek you. They want your wisdom, even though they may not know it, but they're wanting your wisdom. And that's something that I was not expecting, so when I was thinking of parenting, and maybe because the ways that my parents used to parent me, I can remember was when I was a teenager. So when I was a teenager, I was expecting when I would discipline my children that I would let them sit there to think about their actions, even young children, because that's what happened with me when I was a teenager, right? If I got punished or grounded, I was grounded for a week or a month or whatever. My mom would say, sit and think about what you did. With young children, I'm learning, especially with my boys, I'm learning that I don't really need to do that with them. I've learned that I can discipline them and immediately comfort them right after, because they're smart enough to understand what they've done, but also they don't know how to manage their feelings like maybe a teenager would. So it's okay for me to discipline them, let them know what they did wrong is wrong, but also comfort them immediately. I don't need to have them sit there and sulk and in their bad feelings.
That's really powerful. I really appreciate that you talked about, building that trust and having those conversations, and that, yes, here's that discipline. But what I'm really realizing, right, that you mentioned was, okay, they don't really know, they have these big feelings and they don't know how to process them. And, and what I also like is you touched on something I was going to ask you about later is, what were some things that perhaps change, right, from what you were shown, because we always have a chance to get better, right? We honor our families and our parents, but we always have a different way that we might be learning. And I think what was wonderful is you were like, well, I thought I was going to do this, right? I thought I was going to have them sit. But then as I was learning them, I realized, oh, like if I just talk to them right afterwards and they want wisdom from me. So I think that's really impactful, for, fathers or even mothers out there. So I'm glad that you were able to note that.
Yeah.
What are some other helpful tips that you might share? I know you shared so many, but what are some other helpful tips you might share with some parents or really even fathers based on things that you've learned?
Yeah. So specifically for the fathers, I know I did, even with both my children, even after having Lucas. One thing that I really wrestled with, especially in the beginning, and I'll give some context. So we decided that we were going to breastfeed both of them. Well, not we, but Nina would breastfeed them. So I felt very in the beginning like, man, my kids don't really need me, right? So I'm sitting there as a father. They anytime they're hungry, mom is feeding them. Anytime they're being put to sleep, mom is going to nurse them to sleep and figure out ways. And I kind of just sat back and felt like, man, what am I needed for? So I really had to create times and be intentional to connect with them and find my own way to do that, even when they're newborns up until now. I don't know if it's because they're boys, but when they want to be comforted, most of the time they're running to mama. So I have to be very intentional as a new father to connect and fight those feelings that I'm unworthy. Because sometimes I would sit back and be, man, they don't really need me. Am I worthy of being a father? I would wrestle with those thoughts. And it's not because my wife was saying those things. It wasn't because anyone was saying those things, but I guess just because of the amount of quality time that she had with them, I really wrestled with that as a new father. So I would say, fight those feelings. They need you. Mama needs you. And I would say one of the best things that you can do for your children, especially if you have boys, as a father, is loving their mother. Loving their mother and showing them how to love their mom, how to treat their mother, and how a man should talk and treat a woman. I think that's very key. So those are some things that I would think about.
Thank you. I really appreciate your vulnerability once again, and sharing about how you felt. And I really love that perspective, because I don't always often hear that, right? Where perhaps other fathers out there that you spoke to are feeling that way, where, your wife was breastfeeding the kids, those times you're like, well, how am I worthy? I think that's really impactful. Like, how am I worthy as a father? And you navigating that and figuring out, well, how do I actually build time for them, right? What is my role and how do I build that? And I think that's important, because even for fathers out there, they may not sure, or perhaps, Zach, I don't know if you agree, but maybe perhaps, other roles, right, with gender that people think, no, that's just for the mom to do, right? And not having that equal partnership with how does that look? So for you, looking at what does that look for you and your wife and your family, And I also love that you talked about modeling for your sons. What does it look like to love their mom, and how do they talk to their mom, and how do you want them, right, to grow up loving their, like, other people, their other women or sisters or whatever, you know, in their lifetime. And I think that's really admirable. And, you know, I thank you for doing that, because we certainly need that, you know, across families.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you agree, Zach. I just want to kind of go back to that point of, okay, you know, I didn't know what my role was as a dad. Do you think that is more common than not, like you talking with other men?
Yeah, I mean, so my worldview and my framework and how I was raised, obviously I am a Latino male, so I can speak to us. And I think in our worldview and some things that we deal with in just the masculinity of Latino males specifically, we have this kind of machismo attitude, right? And I was blessed because my father was very loving. For most of my life, was raised by my single mother, but when my father was around, he was very loving. And I know that that's not something that he himself experienced and his father experienced. And even from other friends that are coming from my background, I know that they've experienced this. Some of my friends would say, you know, I hardly have heard that from my father, I love you, you know, where it was kind of like, I work, I come home, I expect things to be done for me, and I expect the mom to raise the boys, and my own job is to provide for this family. And I was blessed by my father, you know, to be very loving and give me some nurturing as well, because I think we need to do that as fathers. That's not just for the moms to do, to be that nurturing side of things. I think when we, you know, if the father in the household, if you are the disciplinarian and you kind of, you know, hold the law in a sense, if you can also show them that nurturing side of yourself, I think that is very important for the development of your children, because, you know, they learn that it's, and I've always heard, rules without love leads to rebellion. And that's something that I believe. So, you know, I don't only want to hold the law for my kids and teach them, you know, to follow rules and to behave, but I also want to love them through that. I think that's very important. And I know that in the Latino households, that's something that I think we struggle with.
Well, thank you for sharing. And, you know, again, culture is important, right? Even those family different areas, but like for you saying, okay, there is a little bit of a different way, and like, you know, and so and again, talking with other people, right, your friends, and saying, like maybe there is something new. And I think I think just acknowledging that and being able to say, you know, honoring your family past, right, because sometimes we only know what we know, and then it's like as we keep growing and changing. So I think that's really great that you were able to figure out, and it kind of goes back to what you said too, with the love over law, but it kind of goes back to how you've been disciplined. Like you said, okay, I have conversations. Isn't that the case, right? Like when you're in relationship, to really have conversations versus, you know, feeling like we're always punished, right? Because that's that intimacy that you're developing for your kids, to say, I'm going to come to you, Dad, at all times, and I'm going to trust you that you're going to love me no matter what, which is really amazing.
Absolutely.
Are there any possible resources you would like to share with the audience, perhaps even fathers, that have helped you throughout this journey?
Yeah, I myself, you know, I am not much of a reader, sadly. I am working on it. So I like to listen. So I'm an auditory learner. So podcasts are my thing. One of the ones are, there's a podcast named Focus on the Family. That's my wife and I. They have a ton of things just on parenting and marriage and so forth. So specifically with parenting, they have a lot of interviews with parents that just are going through the same things that we've gone through. And I know that for me, you know, I've learned, man, it's, we're not the only ones, you know, dealing with what we're dealing with. And you feel a sense of community, even in times of like this and COVID, just to listen to podcasts and hear that other people are going through the same things that we are. And two books that my wife and I have read together, there's a book called Parenting by Paul David Tripp. Again, it's Parenting by Paul David Tripp. And then the second one, and this one, I'll be honest, was mainly for Elliot. Parenting the Strong-Willed Child by Dr. James Dobson.
Okay.
Those two books have helped us out a lot. And that podcast, that's definitely something that I would mention. And even also for my wife, I've had even trouble finding these, but there's some Facebook groups out, you know, with parents in similar life stages. So parents of young children and things like that. Now, obviously you can't trust everything you read on Facebook, because some people be, acting crazy there. But, I was just being, and if you're searching for that community and just seeing, and you're wanting this, just get opinions and things like that, there are some Facebook groups out there that you could, join. But those 3 resources are definitely something I'd recommend.
Great. That's wonderful. So I will list all those, again, the podcast and the book. So thank you, Zachary, for the mentioning those resources.
Yeah.
And then finally, really I enjoyed talking with you about building connections. And I love, Zach, that you are this trailblazer and wanting to do the best. And I just honor, everything you've done so far, and you as a father, and your willingness to be vulnerable. I mean, I think that's really amazing. And so again, I just want to honor that in you. And, it's really awesome knowing you over all these years and seeing
thank you.
what you're doing.
Likewise.
But in terms of looking at that final wisdom tip for fathers, or what is one word or phrase that you want to share with fathers who want to build healthy connections with their children?
Yeah, I would say, you got this. There have been parents since the beginning of time that have raised children, and there are parents that are out there going through what you're going through. You're not alone. Your parents raised you, if you've had that blessing and you were able to receive that. But yeah, you got this. This is just be willing to learn, be humble that you are new, that you don't know everything, and, just seek wisdom and be willing to try new things and learn your children, learn and cultivate that relationship. If you have multiple children, they are different people. So learn and cultivate it and spend intentional time with them. So that's what I would say.
Great. Thank you for all those tips. So really you got this, right? And learn your children and be intentional on your time. And I think that's a big one that you alluded to.
Yes.
Again, audience, there was a lot of wisdom from Zachary Cruz on this topic, and I would say in his time with his younger kids, he learned quite a lot to be able to share to you and willing to keep learning. So out there, make sure, audience, if you enjoyed this, please look at the description for any of Zach's resources. You can listen to this on the podcast and really the YouTube first, so hopefully via video. And also know that, Zach, I don't know if there's a way, just in case there's some fathers out there that are wanting to touch base with you. Do you have any way for them to contact you if they're willing, that you're willing to share with me, like perhaps email or something, some type of way to?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on Facebook. I'm Zachary Jovan Cruz. So you can add me on Facebook and DM me. But also my email is ZJ Cruz, and Cruz is CRUZ. So ZJCruz215@gmail.com. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'm here to talk. Like I said, I'm not perfect, but I can share my wisdom and share my experience with you. I am very open about that.
Great. So thank you so much. So audience, please like, share, subscribe, tell a friend. Have a great day, and I'll catch you tomorrow on another day of An Apple a Day with Dr. Amanda. So take care and be well. Thank you, Zach, so much again for your time. Bye.
Thank you, Amanda.